Yeah, we're finished. Yeah. All the trees are
Good evening, members. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the STBF on Wednesday the 25th of February. We've just got two substantial matters to cover this evening. First, we're being asked to receive and approve the STBF financial statements for the year ending March 2025. Second, we've been asked to receive reports relating to the decline in the value of the Tollbridge Fund and the compliance and efficiency of the fund. On the second matter, I'd like to set some parameters for this evening's discussion. Members should note that this report has been circulated on two occasions previously, including the full meeting of the STBF in December. And at that meeting we agreed to this separate meeting tonight, and we've all had the opportunity to take time to consider the contents for a number of weeks. From this, it shouldn't be any surprise this evening that tonight's discussion is not to approve or remove any of the options included in the Times report. Tonight it is about discussing whether we move to the feasibility stage to review the various options that have been included in the report. I'd like to thank the working group who have invested substantial time and amount of effort to get to this discussion this evening. And I would ask members to focus on what they are actually being asked to consider in this evening and not jump to any end results that may or may not be supported. These are not under discussion tonight, and they will be discussed when we have further information available to us, which is why we're asking to have a feasibility stage undertaken, because there's a lot of information we need before we can make proper and informed decisions as a trustee of the fund. Thank you. Okay, Town Clerk, are there any apologies for absences?
Councillor Green has personal commitment and Councillor Carter's not been here, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. This is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Does anybody have any to declare? No. Thank you. Agenda item 3, public participation. This is when we have a 20-minute session set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda and other matters if time permits. Town Clerk.
We have requests from two members of the public, Mrs. Bax and Mrs. Glynn.
Who would like to go first?
Do you want to go first?
Thank you, Elaine. It's a 5-minute slot,
Yeah, it's
so
not long.
okay, if you're that's fine. I don't need to time it.
No.
So fire away.
Right, my father was the borough mayor, Barry Roberts was the town clerk, and Owen Jordan was the borough treasurer. They went to London and the Tollbridge Fund was set up for the benefit of the people of Sandwich. I feel this should remain a separate fund for what it was intended and not to be amalgamated into Sandwich Town Council funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
I should take 4.5 minutes. Good evening. I'd like to start by addressing the final accounts where the trustee has altered the wording this year from Sandwich's Museum and Archive Collection to Sandwich Tollbridge Fund's Museum and Archive Collection, suggesting a change in ownership. I think it should be understood that the STBF is the current custodian of the combined collection because the Guildhall accounts are currently domiciled within STBF accounts. It should be remembered that the Sandwich Archives are a central hub and contain documents belonging to other local parishes, and that prior to April 21, the Guildhall accounts were held within Sandwich Town Council accounts. Thus, the Town Council was the managing body, and the STBF made a contribution towards the upkeep of the Guildhall, similar to option 2 proposed further in the agenda. The other point that concerns me is that according to paragraph 20 of the trustees' report, there was no progress made at all in the fiscal year on transferring the Museum and Archives collection to the new store or to recording the inventory in the reference library. Is that correct? Moving on to the investments, for the benefit of those members who joined in 2022 or later, the 150,000 shown as transferred into investments in 2022-23 was not new money, but monies raised from the sale of part of the car park to the surgery, which was paid into investments to help offset, some might say disguise, the large spend in the previous year on Guildhall refurbishments. We should be aware that the value of the STBF is the value of its land and buildings assets plus its investment portfolio, and that the value of its land and building assets and car park income had been diminished by the sale. Thus, while those monies are shown as income to investments, they were effectively a drawdown from other assets, which isn't recognised by the table presented to this meeting and may confuse the total drawn down from the STBF in total in support of the Guildhall. Regarding the project, the proposed STBF review is clearly necessary under the circumstances. That said, the biggest issue by far is the long-term viability of the Guildhall. Regardless of where STBF funds are located, in time they will be wiped out by Guildhall and museum expenditure unless radical steps are taken to enable the building and the museum to break even financially. And whilst it is clear the Guildhall building is loved by some, it also happens to be of little or no consequence to others. I have seen residents comment that they don't want their council tax spent on the Guildhall or the museum, and we know that the majority of visitors to the museum are not local people. Perhaps that might change if the archives were open to the public, but it is where we are now. It is encouraging to hear there will be a public consultation concerning the Guildhall, which I hope will include some mention of the alternative costs of safeguarding the building, such as projects and services in the community that cannot be funded due to the resource demands of the Guildhall. Some local councils deliver more to the community with less income, for example, employing a village caretaker or sprucer rather than relying on a DDC sprucer and volunteers, supporting a youth club, facilitating regular community coffee mornings, investing in highways improvements and speeding prevention, and even buying the central Christmas tree rather than relying on others to provide funding. STC has less budget for such things, but it does have the Guildhall. We need to know what residents really want, so I hope a widespread consultation will be conducted. And lastly, I'd like to throw in a suggestion. Given it was not within the STBF's original remit to run a museum or the Sandwich Archives, and because the museum may be limited in its operations and aspirations, all the time it sits within the confines of the STBF, I'd like to suggest that consideration be given to floating the museum as a separate charitable legal entity, and reassigning the Guildhall lease to the museum, which would then become the manager of the Guildhall. Staff related to events and the Guildhall could be two-peed over, and both STC and the STBF would each pay their own accommodation hire costs, and both may make grants to the museum towards its operations. In essence, the total financial movement wouldn't necessarily change, but this arrangement would enhance transparency with regard to use of the precept and museum funding, and may enable the museum to access external funding that had not been considered or thought possible under the current arrangement. Thank you.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 4, STBF accounts. The trustee is invited to receive and approve the STBF financial statements for the financial year ending 31st March 2025. Are there any comments?
Move to approve.
Yeah, there might be some comments first, we'll just make sure. Okay, approved. Somebody second? Councillor Franklin seconded. And if we take that to a vote. That's unanimous, thank you. Can we entertain yourselves for a couple of minutes? We now need to sign, myself and Mr. Wiles, the documents. So there's at least 2 places in there. And then we'll sort out. Page 4, first one. And page 7. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5. So, one of the working group that worked on this is Councillor Black, and Councillor Black will be leading us through the next few items on the agenda. Councillor Black.
Thank you. Right, well, the Tollbridge Fund investments, my colleague, and say it's investments, because the property portfolio has diminished significantly over the years compared to what the original sandwich agreement was. And some of the properties are in an extremely poor state of repair, and we are spending significant sums to bring them up to date. There's been decades of neglect, which we need to grasp. But looking at this, my colleague concentrated with the responsible financial officer on the investments, right? And the bottom line is that whilst the fund may have a cash value of about £2 million, and that compares to a number of years ago, however, when you take inflation into account, the actual purchasing power compared to the time period they've looked at is now 1.3 million pounds, which is a pretty substantial reduction. If the cash value of the purchasing power had been sustained, you would be looking at a fund which would be well over £3 million now. It has been woefully short of that for many years, and we've been looking as a town, as a Tollbridge fund, for some time now as to what we can do to improve it. And let me just remind you of some of the things that have been happening to improve it. We've actually had a tough budget to increase the higher charges and the usage of sandwich of the Guildhall. Now, obviously, when you put some of the charges up, there are some people who, understandably, are not very happy with that, but you still need to get the revenue in. The last report I had from the property manager was that even some previous customers have come back because they're getting a better quality of service now than they had, even though the rate has gone up. Okay. The second thing is our finance officer has had a very careful look at how quilted cheviot, in other words, the people who do our investments, perform, and we've been looking very carefully at that. There is a report which some of you may have seen called the Charities Authorised Investment Fund Comparator, which is a comparison sheet which is comprised of about 6 or 7 charity funds. This is not quilted cheviot marking its own homework, despite what some people have suggested. This is an independent company that produces this, and that says of the 5 or 6 charity funds that they're using as proper comparators, because they're charities, because they are low to medium risk, all the sorts of things that were mentioned earlier, quilted cheviot are doing fairly well in comparison to those. If you have a low to medium risk portfolio, then clearly you're not going to get the short-term gains that you will get from the FTSE 100. You won't. It's just not going to happen, because we were not prepared to take the risk, and I'd be very surprised if any charities were. The difficulty is comparing apples with apples. Now, we've had 2 reports from CAIF on this. We have discussed them. We'll be looking at them again to see what else we can do with quilted cheviot to increase the investments that we're getting. But compared to others, they are doing fairly well. And I've checked with a couple of other financial advisors about quilted cheviot, and no one has said to me they are poorly performing in that sector. That's the critical message. The third thing we've done is, for whatever reasons, in the past, the drawdown of money from the fund was done in the middle of the year rather than towards the end of the year. And that meant actually that you weren't getting as much interest as the later you draw down funds from the interest from the fund, the more interest you earn. And this has not been done in the past, but that's what we're doing now. So we are doing elements that we can, but we still have the fact that the toll bridge fund has not kept up in purchasing power with what it was originally set up to do. But bear in mind that when this was set up, it was a very pragmatic solution. I don't think anybody would suggest it was anything else than a very pragmatic solution. The difficulty is, 30 years later, things have changed, legislation has changed, the way council have operated, and not just Sandwich Town Council, but DDC. DDC used to pay a significant proportion of the costs, they don't now, and they also don't occupy any space here. So all of these things taken into account mean that things have changed radically. So that's the reason that we've been very concerned about trying to get this. It is complex, but we've tried our very best to get it to simple terms, as you'll see in the chart, which is attachment 5, I think? Yes. Attachment 5, and that's on the website if you haven't had a chance to read that, okay? Please do so, because there's nothing secret in that, but please have a look at it, and this is the difficulty that we're facing. It's something that is very hard to face up to, and you can understand why in the past it hasn't always been faced up to. But we are where we are, we're trying to find ways out of it. That's what I've got to say about that.
Councillor Black, that's helpful.
I'd like to comment on Councillor Black. I mean, you're comparing how it was how many years ago to today. Have you taken into account how much money has been withdrawn?
That's
For salary, for wages,
Yeah.
for the boiler? I mean, you can't compare like for like.
No.
But I think you are trying to compare like for like, so I think your figures are flawed, basically.
Well, you can argue that with the RFO and with
We've
council.
brought so much money out over the years.
So
Oh, yes,
let's,
but
let's
that's the
not
point.
have a conversation across
No,
the
but
tables.
I think it's flawed, Mr.
Okay, the comment is noted. From my perspective, Councillor Black, I would say this is a pot of money. It is used for a number of reasons, which includes maintenance of this building, maintenance of other buildings. The discussion tonight is about the fund. How it's being used has contributed to why the fund in front of us very clearly shows a decline over a substantial period. So the thing is, we need to face that and decide what we're going to do. And one of the options is we do nothing.
That's
And
right.
that is in the report. Equally, if we do nothing, then 10 years from now, 12 years, 14 years, the fund will not exist. So that's the reality. Or we take some measures, which are the range of options in front of us, which we will discuss in terms of feasibility. So back to you, Councillor Black, is there anything else you want to say?
Well, really the only thing is that, yes, there have been significant drawdowns, but that's what the fund's set up to do.
Well, if I may,
One more, yeah.
I mean, I know you've talked about £2 million, but we need to spend money on our buildings, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, the Fitness Connection building,
100%.
the cinema, this building was fantastic, man. It's going to go up and down. It's been down before, and then you let it build up. But we're not spending any money out to start with. Everything is deteriorated, so it's going to cost us more. We've got to be more tight with our maintenance programs, which I must admit have been allowed to slack them, but we've had a lot of problems with the maintenance problems as well. But that money will go up and down. I think it went down to about 1.5 million, although it was 1.5. And that was
2021 we did that.
It
So,
did in, yeah.
Let's, your points are valid, Councillor Franklin, but what you have to do is look at this as a fund from the top down. The fund is shrinking, and we cannot say it will ebb and flow. It won't. It has shrunk since 2008. This is what's in front of us. Today, its value, purchase value, is significantly below where it was in 2008.
Well, I don't see a problem with it.
And that's a view you can take. That's fine. Anybody else with comments on this? If not, we've been asked to receive a report in terms of the depletion and noted. So is somebody happy to propose that we receive the report? Right, okay. Please. Yes. We were, yes, I invite a comment, so if you'd like to comment.
Well, I think this is a really useful report. I think several of us have been saying for the last several years that this building in particular is effectively a white elephant. I mean, the report makes it clear that it costs $250,000 a year to run. and the income we get is 60,000. So I think the point made by Christina is important, because the people of Sandwich see this building as an important community asset, but are they prepared to subsidise it effectively from the Tollbridge Fund annually to the tune of 80 or 100,000 a year? So that's the question that we have to ask. And I think clearly we need to consider the options in this report. We do need advice about the governing instrument. We do need advice about
Yeah, we're not moving on to that part yet,
Yeah,
so we're just
okay.
dealing with the depletion at the
So,
moment.
yeah.
Councillor Pennington. You
Yes,
don't need to stand up.
thank you. Yes, I must say that since arriving on this council, I found the financial arrangements extremely complex, and I find this report very helpful in explaining what's what are the problems, and where we need to head. I do have the impression, as Councillor Black said, that for decades these problems haven't been properly addressed. And I, like many around the table, have expressed disquiet over the last couple of years about the returns on the investment and so on. And I am glad that something is now being envisaged to be done about it. I do think we need a proper study. I don't think many of us around the table have adequate experience either in the financial or the legal aspects of all that's involved. So I am very much in favour of launching this study as proposed, but I do feel that those who were expressing concern over the last 2 or 3 years were quite right to express concern. We weren't just moaning about it, we were actively seeking to do something better.
And we'll pick this up again on the next part of the meeting. This is about depletion. All we've been asked to do is receive the report this year. Are there any other comments on the depletion report? If not, is somebody happy to propose that we accept that, receive it? Councillor Anderson and Councillor Miles has seconded in the votes on that. Thank you. If I could thank the RFO working on the
I'm going to abstain. Whether or not the report that has been factual, I think it's incorrect.
Chair, sorry, can I just make one comment? I know we just voted for it.
We have finished
I
this.
know, I just want to make one comment. I want it to be on camera. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I appreciate Councillor Back being here, but if there's 2 people making an item for an agenda item, then both councillors or the councillors should be here. It really annoys me that councillors decide that they want to put stuff on agendas but then not turn up to talk about it, because otherwise it throws it away. And I appreciate Councillor Back doing it because he's part of that report, but both councillors, if they're named on the item on the agenda, they should be here.
Noted. Thank you. So we've received that report. Councillor Anderson proposed
Yeah,
and
got it.
Councillor Wells. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now on to the main part of the meeting, which is the report on the Tollbridge Charity Compliance and Council Efficiency. We might get bored of listening to Mr. Black all evening, but here you go again.
Thank you. What I just want to do is run through some summaries of this, because it's a long document. It's clearly heavy going to read, and some people have leapt to some conclusions but haven't necessarily read the whole of it. I hope by the time we finish our discussions today that people realise we've actually tried to take almost every viewpoint into consideration. Whether we've succeeded is another matter. Okay, today you're only being asked to decide on the feasibility study and roadmap. You're not being asked to make any decisions on any of the options. Until we know what the outcome of the feasibility study is, we can't decide on any option, because we're going to be running blind on this. We don't have the relevant information yet. What are the reasons behind this review? Some of it we've covered already. The cost of the Guildhall, 250,000. The depletion of the charity funds in real terms. We do have an extremely complicated operation of charges between the 2 bodies, which when I arrived, I literally least 6 months we can start to understand it. The other problem is that there's very little proper documentation about it. There are no audit trails and there's no authorization. So we are in, not in a good place. Fortunately, we have very good staff, but we really need to try to tighten this up. And it was part of the business plan that was put to the council about a year ago and was accepted. Now, the review has shown that the council and the charity are intertwined from an organisational, a legal, a financial, an HR, and a property point of view. But that's an inherent conflict, because on the one hand, as councillors, we're obviously trying to do the very best we can for Sandwich within the funds and the legislation that we've got. However, as trustees, and all the councillors come together to form one trustee for the Tollbridge Fund, you're saying, oh well, we can draw money from the Tollbridge Fund to fund the council. It's a little bit of a conflict of interest, and it's never been particularly well articulated and regulated. And whether the charity commissioners would really like that kind of arrangement to continue is a moot point at the moment. We don't know. But that's where we are. The question is, how do we improve it? There are 4 potential options, and the typical option appraisal starts with do nothing. Well, that is not going to work, because we know it was extremely good when it was set up, and of course there were a lot more properties attached to it, and DDC was contributing to it and so on. But 30 years later, nothing has really changed significantly in the structure, and charity law has changed over the decades. So, can we keep the core of it, but seek improvements to existing ways of working? And that's one option I think we need to consider. Secondly, you set up an organisation where the Tollbridge Fund only has one interaction with Sandwich Town Council a year, and when it decides how much money it's going to give Sandwich Town Council, and that's the end of it. After that, STC is going to be entirely liable for everything. In the past, it's been a bit easier to take additional funds out of the Tollbridge Fund. There may be good reasons for it, but it's not necessarily the optimal solution. And the final one is to dissolve the charity and transfer the funds to STC. If STC are constantly able to take funds out of it, you are almost de facto in that situation if you're not careful. Now, that hasn't happened, but it gets close to it sometimes. So, this report does not, I repeat that, does not recommend which option to take, but asks the council to explore what is possible and to understand the implications. We've got to act legally in terms of legal agreement in place and so on. But secondly, as a trustee, we are the trustee, we have to act in the best interests of the charity. And being a councillor and being a trustee has conflicts of interest. We need to be very clear about which hat we're wearing at the time. We've said we've got a roadmap, a proposed roadmap, which I hope councillors will adopt today. Let me just to remind people that the roadmap is this one with all the blue arrows on it. You can see it on the website. And it says in section 5 to undertake formal consultation with all residents. So any suggestion that we're not proposed to do that, I'm afraid is not true. It's complicated and it's a difficult one for councillors to address given their role as a trustee. The best interests of the charity are to conserve funds and to have the minimum of expenditure that is necessary and to take full responsibility for other assets. So, what are we going to do? We've talked about the depletion of the fund, we've talked about the cost of the Guildhall, we've talked a bit about what we're trying to do as the Guildhall to increase the revenue and decrease the amount of money. But ultimately, the council have to make a decision if you want to preserve the charity or run it into the ground. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Okay, so I think that does neatly summarise that what we're here to do is to consider moving to a feasibility activity to support understanding the scale of the challenge, what needs to be done from a compliance perspective, and also to look at it from an efficiency perspective. Councillor Gray, I think you already indicated you'd like to speak.
I think this is a very good and very important report. I've had quite a lot of input into it, because I've discussed it with Councillor Black, Councillor Green, and I think it's very good. The one thing I would urge in terms of progress from here on is that we first talk to the Charity Commission before we go and take legal advice. Because the first thing a lawyer is going to say is, oh, we'll have to talk to the Charity Commission. And then we're going to end up paying unnecessary fees. And the crux of the matter lies with the Charity Commission. Remember that the Guildhall is leased half to the council and half to the STBF. And therefore, we cannot do anything without Charity Commission's consent. And I would urge the council to agree with this report on the subject of what I said about making sure that we consult the Charity Commission first.
Yeah, last time we discussed the Tollbridge Fund was about 6 years ago, and we had one Labour councillor, and he was totally against the Tollbridge Fund and wanted it totally spent. And so here we are, 6 years later, we decided to keep the Tollbridge Fund, and I think it's just that, so I'm happy with the status quo, so I'm totally against the report, and I'm totally against spending, which I think £10,000 to get legal fees in, so I think we should carry as we are. I mean, some of these councils have only been on the council not even 3 years yet, and they want to change everything. That charity's been established over 50 years, and that's what gets me. In my opinion, it's I mean, money's been going in and out. It's bound to go in now, and times it will drop. And we've also got an ethical policy. We could get a lot bigger return if we had alcohol, tobacco, and armaments. Now we've got ethical policies, so we're on like a medium risk. We could go for a higher risk, but of course, upset a lot of people because of our ethical policy.
Thank you. Councillor Paynes.
Thank you. I wonder, given some of the comments, if the role of Dover District Council in all this shouldn't be more clearly examined in the terms of reference for the study, whether they are in breach of certain certain commitments that they may have made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Marie?
Yeah, I'm some part agreement with Councillor Franklin on this. I'm old school for the Tollbridge Fund. I have been. I took many funds out of it from the groups that I've done over the years, and it's worked very well. However, I do applaud the council, STC and STBF, because you've now moved from paying wages for staff. It's moved down to STC, and I agree with that. I think it's great. It should have never happened in the first place as a charity. One of my big gripes is I know, as Councillor Gray said, we'll speak to the Charity Commission first. Yes, that's fantastic, and then they will probably say to seek legal advice, because that's the first thing as well. Are we legally allowed to do this, to check, to put these questions to the Charity Commission to say, right, this is our options, what we want to do. Also, are we legally allowed to close down a charity? That's the other thing as well. That's what we need to check. Then against the £10,000 of charity money being paid to the legal fees, my problem would be if STC, which are part of this, want legal fees to be paid for to look at the charity, and STC pay it. Doesn't come out of charity money. That money is for the town, has been for the town for the last 50 years, and it's just stayed in the town. I am dead against. I will not be voted against the £10,000 thing, but it needs to be looked at. Yes, there has been mismanagement, as I said before. We've all said it. However, I am dead against using charity money to pay for legal fees, and also I am dead against obviously the last option, which is to fold it. Always happening. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Marie. So I'll make my comments and Councillor back in. So the reality is that we're here tonight as trustee. We're not here as STC. So that's the first key point. We are here with responsibilities for the charity. we have in front of us very clear explanation that the charity is not where it should be in terms of its value. It has decreased significantly over years, and I accept money comes in and goes out, but actually it's the trend. The trend is downwards, and the trend will continue downwards because of the costs that are inherent in terms of what we currently have as assets and staff, and that will not change unless we take other dramatic steps away from managing the fund itself. Today is about the feasibility study. The only way a feasibility study can be run by the charity, because it's a charity that has to do it, money has to be available to take legal advice, or we as a group will not be able to answer the questions that need to be answered. And that when that is done, if we agree to it, we then come back as a trustee, and then we make a sensible decision on what happens next with input from the town in terms of the options. So for me, this is a well thought through roadmap. There is a cost involved, but that is unavoidable. And actually, when we say it's money for the town at the moment, the money isn't going to the town. It's going on the assets that the STBF owns, it's going on the staff of the STC. Now you can argue indirectly that is benefiting the town. But actually, we had to take a very difficult decision 2 years ago, which was stop the grants, because we could not afford to give grants out. We were very lucky that we had the Georgina Maddox Fund came on stream in parallel. So my personal view is we cannot stay blinkered or head in the sand. We have to tackle this problem, because this is why we're here. We are running this charity. It's not here as councillors. Anybody else? Councillor Wiles?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We as a trustee, we're not STC. We are STC as the trustee of the Tollbridge Fund. And it's an important distinction. And on page 4 of this report, it quite clearly sets out the questions that need to be raised. We cannot carry on doing things as we've always done them, because we know that we're not acting properly and legally. We do not have a governing document for this charity. There's nothing on the Charity Commission website which says how the charity should be governed. That's a weakness. It makes quite clear we need to be assured that we're obeying the law, and we need to seek advice on that point. Now, the Tollbridge Fund is the share portfolio, but it's also all the assets that we own. So we have a number of assets which are in the town: the cinema, the drill hall, the fitness connection, and other assets. And we do need to review those as part of this review, because clearly some of those assets are grossly underperforming. They're not in a good condition. You all know the buildings I'm talking about. We need to look at those, and the property manager is going to be bringing forward an asset management strategy within a few months from now, and we need to review that as part of this general review. So we cannot do nothing on this. We have to follow the roadmap that's being suggested and take proper advice.
Do you think we should look at our ethical policy and change the risk up to high risk? Get shares in Vickers.
So that is a separate discussion from tonight.
No.
However, we are meeting with Cortachivia in the next
Do you
couple
want
of
to
months.
get returns?
And
Change
that is a
investment.
conversation we can have. But again, this is for the trustee to
Yeah.
decide that. And not everybody will agree with you, Councillor Franklin, I'm sure. Councillor Back.
I think we're in Vickers.
I'm a little bit concerned about the suggestion we rush to the Charities Commission first. We know there are problems. We don't know how significant these problems are. Clearly, at some stage, we have to talk to the Charities Commission. Absolutely no doubt about it. But it's like in a situation where you know some things aren't right, but you don't go running to HMRC the very first thing you do. You've got to see what can you do, what can you demonstrate that you're doing to amend a situation with obvious flaws. So therefore, as one of the people that seem to be being tasked with doing this, I am not prepared to be hidebound that I have to go rushing to the Charities Commission. And I'm sorry, We will do so, we've got to do so, but it would not be my first port of call.
What was I going to say, Mr. Mayor? If we've been doing accounts of ours inferred that we're doing something that wasn't correct, the Charity Commission would never sign their accounts off every year.
That is
But
based
it has
on,
been legal every year.
that is based on the assumption that the Charity Commission are that meticulous in terms of reviewing. I can't comment on that.
We've never had any complaints.
The Charity Commission are notoriously poor at regulating charities.
What we do know, there are elements of the charity at the moment that there are question marks in terms of its legality. So we have to validate that it is legal, and it may prove.
You make me feel like I acted illegally as mayor, and I don't like it. You're inferring that I did something wrong, signing off the accounts every year. I was mayor for 3 years, and I'm really upset tonight.
So, Councillor Franklin, what
We're not solicitors.
Our town clerk was a
Councillor
solicitor.
Councillor Franklin, what Councillor Black said was the rules and regulations around the charity status has changed over the years. And the point is, we now need to do a health check to make sure that what was originally set up and what has been applied over those 50 years remains valid. It's nothing at all about the trustee, it's about the environment in which this charity operates. It has changed dramatically. We're talking a 50-year time span, so things have changed. And this is a health check. A health check makes it's all completely fine, but the questions need to be asked.
But I was mayor 4 years ago, so I still feel like I didn't a slur against me.
It's not at all. Not at all. I don't see that, but
Well, I feel it.
The Charity Commission do not sign off charities' accounts. They generally accept what is filed with them, and they will only investigate them if there is a complaint raised by members of the charity or somebody else.
But we do have a registered accountant, so every year the registered accountant sign them off, and then those accounts, once they're signed by the mayor, go to the Charity Commission. So they're signed off every year, and I'm very upset that the allegations have been made that things haven't been right. The accountants would never have signed them off. Would they?
That's not strictly true.
Well, I think so you're saying our accountants are acting in the grey
No,
areas?
I'm not.
It sounds like it.
It's the accountants look at the accounts and the figures.
Yep.
They do not look at whether the Charity Commission is complying
Yep.
with the law.
what we're doing is we're preparing accounts each year that are supported by an accountancy firm to make sure
Yeah,
that.
you're referring to me the town council was wrong.
Nobody has said that.
Well, it sounds like it.
Saying
You're saying we fudged stuff, got the accounts in, they accepted our fudge, sent it off the Charity Commission, and everything we've done over the last 50 years, well, I do feel that.
So tonight I have signed the accounts for this year, so if anybody's fudging it, I'm a fudger. What I would say, Councillor Franklin, is that I've been through these, and I can only look at it from a presentation of financial information. What I cannot do when I sign it is actually validate that the Charity Commission rules are being complied with. What I've got in front of me, as Councillor Wiles has, are accounts. No, we should sign them as accounts presented by our accountants, and are they correct? As accounts, they are. But it doesn't mean to say the charity is compliant, because rules have changed. So that's why we need to have this health check, review, and feasibility. But you will have the option to vote against that.
Well, I will, definitely will. Totally
Any
against
more
it.
comments?
Terrible.
I just wondered, although this is obviously STBF, it's so tightly linked in with STC. Is there any option of the cost of this review being shared between the two bodies or being considered? Because obviously it is a charity, I understand that objection, but when you're looking about the amount of money that's coming out anyway, to me it isn't an ideal amount of money you want to spend, but it is probably a necessary evil.
Yes,
And I think the fact is, sorry, going on from Councillor Franklin, I think it has been acknowledged repeatedly that it is so complex, and it's not intentionally been made complex, it's just how it's developed over the years, and at any point that we sit and unpick it, it's going to be challenging, difficult, probably unpopular with some people. That doesn't mean that's not a reason to go ahead and do it.
So we're here tonight as a trustee, and we're being asked as a trustee to determine whether we want a feasibility study undertaken.
But there's a cost involved in that.
And there's a cost involved. That's a £10,000 cap. It's not an estimated cost. That's what's been asked in terms of the working group feel that they need to have as a fund available. It will be tracked through the finance committee. There will be reports that will need to come into the finance committees at each stage of the process. But you know, it's tonight we make a call as a trustee. What we can't do as a trustee is say another body, i.e. STC, should stump up cash.
Well, actually, I've got to contradict you there.
Okay, well,
if I'm one of the people that's going to be asked to take this forward, and by the way, we need more resource than 2 people, and so we're going to have to ask people to step up. I'm not so concerned as to where the money comes from. I'm just concerned that we get a sensible fund to run this. If we don't need the full amount, we certainly won't spend the full amount. But we do need to get some initial advice. Then we can decide how we approach Group A, Group B, Group C, the Charity Commission and so on. That's the way that we would, in all projects like this I've done before. So if STC is in a position to stump up some cash, I would follow Councillor Tomlin's suggestion that they stump up some of the cash. It's in their interest as much as in the Tollbridge Fund's interest.
So the STC has signed off its budget for next year. So that's number one. That's number one. Secondly, tonight we are a trustee. We should not be looking to a third party, albeit STC, to do that. What we can do, somebody could propose that actually the amount that's allocated for now isn't £10,000. It could be £5,000, and then there's a further check back at a later point. So there are options in terms of recommendations here, but these are the recommendations you have in front of you to decide.
The comment is, for me, will be, I do agree with what Councillor Gray said. We have to speak to the Charity Commission first, because I guarantee you, as he said, we will seek legal advice, and they will tell you to go and speak to the Charity Commission before they come back to them. What I'd like to do, suggest, if possible, councillors agree, would be to. So the first part of it would be speak to the Charity Commission first, without spending any money, because it's free advice from the Charity Commission, we'll know that. In the meantime, we put an item on the agenda for STC, because even though you say that we are the trustee, STC are still involved in this process, they're still involved. STC are the trustee for the charity. So my idea would be is to put an item on the agenda for STC to see if they can pay part of the money towards, so we don't lose or use too much charity money to pay for the fees if we go down that route.
So, Councillor Marie, we are here as a trustee. I'll say it again. You cannot suggest that this trustee makes a decision for the STC. You will need to go through a different channel away from this meeting. This is not a discussion from an STC perspective. You can't do that in this meeting.
Okay.
You can raise it separately. You can raise it separately through STC's mechanics, but not.
Okay, I'll change that slightly then. So the recommendation that I would have is to speak to the Charity Commission first. We drop that money down to £5,000 on the agenda first straight away. Whilst the trustee is speaking to the Charity Commission, I can put an item in the agenda for STC to say to support the Tollbridge Fund in paying towards legal fees.
So what I would suggest is, as Councillor Black has already made a plea for other people to be involved in the working group, you should be changing that and volunteering to be involved in the working group. Because the working group should be enabled by this trustee to do what they feel is right, and we should trust them to do so. What we shouldn't be doing is giving them a list of what they must follow. The Charity Commission will be consulted, but they should be trusted to do it in the right manner. And that might be an initial conversation with the Charity Commission, but it's for yourselves to decide. So if you want to volunteer to be on the working group, fantastic. As Councillor Black has already pleaded for others to be involved. Councillor Pennington.
Thank you. Firstly, it seems to me that if we try to involve STC in the study we are only digging deeper in the hole that we're in already. It seems to me that this possible conflict of interest would only be sort of encased in the whole exercise. We should keep this clean and have it as an STBF study. Obviously, it doesn't prevent us as trustees going to ask views or consult with others, but it seems to me to muddy the waters to have a co-financing. Secondly, I would support the view that it's for the people carrying out a feasibility study to decide at what point to build in the legal aspects rather than us trying to jump the gun, as it seems to me, on the study and consult with charity commissioners first.
Thank you. Councillor Mallow.
Listening to what's been said, we seem to be talking about the legality, the rightness, where the fund should sit, who should run it. Well, not so much who should run it, STC, STBF. The way I see it, we have, just to use some numbers, £2 million. We have an outgoing of roughly 100,000 per year, and I'm just to an extent picking numbers from the air. That's 5%. So we have to have a 5% return to be able to pay that £100,000 per year. But we actually need that 5% plus inflation. So inflation is, let's say, 3%. So we actually need 8%. So regardless of whether the charity commission comes back and says, yeah, you're doing it all okay, where the fund sits, we still are missing out by the inflation or whatever. So actually, and where that money goes to an extent, but fundamentally it's the 100,000, it's the 2 million, 5% plus inflation. I would hope that any study and where we're looking at it, we're actually looking at how we can carry on beyond an arbitrary 10 years, an arbitrary 15 years, because wherever it sits and however it's managed, if we're just about making enough money to keep that £2 million there, it is going down. We know that, we've seen that, and that is partly why, well, that is why we are here. And I would hope that any serious look at how we fix this, because it needs fixing. Do we sell stuff? I mean, for example, if we have a number of properties, which we do, owned by the STBF, and there is a way of building up the funds so that that £100,000 plus the inflation from 3 million invested would just about do it, I would imagine, because then you're looking at not the 100,000, £150,000 comes in, £50,000 goes into it. But I'm just using numbers here to sort of, make my point. I think there's a more of a holistic view rather than Charities Commission, etc. Thank you.
Allow Councillor Back to come back in a second, but what I would say is what you have also missed is the many years of underinvestment in terms of the assets. So it's not just 100,000, because actually the 100,000 is maintaining. What we have is a programme of works that will be another layer of cost.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the money has to be spent. The fund is there. There is a call on it. The call is greater than the amount of money that is available while retaining the numerical amount, ignoring inflation. And if we start looking at, let's say, uplifting the gym, if we uplift the empire, there is even more money to come out. And it's, I think, taking a hard look at this rather than just looking at.
So I'll allow Councillor Black to come on back on that, because he's on the working group of two, in terms of the broadening the scope.
Thank you. On the amount of money, I hope nobody's suggesting we don't spend any money, because that is completely unrealistic. And if that's the attitude and that's the way it goes, count me out. Full stop. I'm not going to be involved. We do need to spend money. We put a sum of 10k in. Now, I would suggest the way forward when listening to the debate is for the STBF to have be prepared to spend 10k, but there is nothing to prevent STBF later on to putting a request into SGC for some funding. But that's just not what we can do at the moment. We can only go for the sum that we've asked here. The second point is, there are a number of people involved in this report. It isn't just myself and Councillor Green, it's the town clerk as well, and maybe some others. I am not prepared to be told when I go to a group for their advice. I'm quite happy to say we will go to them at some stage, but if you want to tell me when I'm going to, how I'm going to do it, again, count me out.
That's very clear, thank you. Councillor Moss.
I think when this council was elected 2.5 years ago, we promised to try to be as open as possible and transparent, and not to discuss things in confidence unless they had to be treated in confidence. So this discussion has been open, and it's a good thing. It's been uncomfortable. It's a bit like we're washing our dirty linen in public, but you know, perhaps that's a good thing, because people need to know about these facts that are in this report. I think, just to answer Councillor Franklin, I mean, clearly he and other councillors acted in good faith over the years, but there have been councillors who've come onto this council who have wide experience of regulation and corporate business and so on. And so some of those people have asked legitimate questions, and one of which is the lack of any governing document. And I think whenever I've wide experience of dealing with governance and regulation, and I think with any regulator, it's always best to be open and honest with them, and not to brush things under the carpet. So if you think there is a problem, which clearly this report sets out, then you should approach that regulator at some point, i.e. the Charity Commission, to say, look, we need your advice, whether that's after taking legal advice or before, that's something we have to discuss. But we have to be open with the regulator, because if you try and hide things, then it makes things worse in the long run.
I'd just like to comment on that. We used to have
Sorry, Councillor Gray, did I ask?
Can I just say, I've no objection if you want to rush off to lawyers and then go and see the Charity Commission. That's up to the working group to decide, and I agree they can't be told by the council who they should go and see. I think that's for discussion later. I think actually this compliance, non-compliance is a bit of a red herring. I think the Charity Commission does comply, and I don't think there's a problem there. But it's fine, they'll to go and find out. So I don't think, Councillor Black, I'm saying I insist we do that. It's entirely up to the working party. My preference would be to go and talk to the Charity Commission, and that's where the real decision needs to be made. But it's up to the working group.
Just respond to that. Thank you, that's very helpful. I perhaps misinterpreted what you were saying. We must, there's absolutely no question we must talk to. The question is when and how, and with what degree of understanding of what the issues are. There's no question whatsoever we've got to go through. I think that's a very helpful point. Thank you.
So, a couple more minutes, Councillor
Well, I was just going to say, the town council meetings and the sandwich topic have always been open to the public. They've always been allowed to attend. The only time I've ever gone in confidence is mainly town council. We don't think we've ever gone in confidence with the Tollbridge Fund. So if the public want to come, they come. If they don't, they don't. And now we have, when we had COVID, we had Zoom meetings because the public could look at the meeting on Zoom. We had that for the 18 months Zoom meeting. And now we've got this, of course we've got Christina that's here all the time. So we've always been public. We've never tried to hide anything.
I'm not sure anybody said that, but I know what you're saying.
It's fully open.
Yeah. And on that note, I'd like to thank all the residents that have turned up tonight.
Can I just clarify, sorry Chair, can I just clarify regarding money spent and council make a decision? Oh yes, it says here that the working group that has the authority to make a decision. However, it's not about whether you being told, the council's being told what they can and can't do. At the end of the day, it's a democracy. the trustee will vote on what. Do you see my point, Councillor Bank? However, I'm more than happy to help you sit on the working group and help you with this sort of thing because I want this to survive. Everybody else does. However, I will not vote for the £10,000 to be used by charity money because that's just not within my values of this town.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, that's absolutely fine. Again, I'm being pointed out that if the STBF decides to go down the route of telling us exactly how to do it, I'm out. That's all I've said.
Okay, I think we've had reasonable amount of time discussing this, unless somebody's
I just want to
really.
make a point, it's probably maybe oversimplifying, but I think if we look at it in terms that we are advocating for the Tollbridge Fund, we're not working against it, we're trying to make it work effectively and have longevity, and I think that's really important to remember. The details of what we're discussing, but it's coming from the heart really, that we want to resolve it and make it work effectively for sandwich and people sandwich.
I think that's a good point. So, and Councillor Black said it earlier, because I know there are people who have said the council is rolling the money from this STBF into the council. Completely false, and nothing more than actually scurrilous, because actually the trustee, which is who is in this room tonight, are doing the right thing, as Councillor Tomlins has said, is we're trying to look at a problem we've got and to try and find ways to take us forward. Okay. And one of those options is do nothing. We might decide, actually, we don't want to own the problem in the end, but that's really not what we should do as a group. Okay, so we've got 4 recommendations. We can go through them one by one, and if there are any, particularly around the amount, if anybody wants to propose an amendment, it will be down to Councillor Black whether he accepts that or not. But the first one, recommendation, trustee is invited to note the report and reviewing the relationship between the charity and the council. I hope that one will be supported, so I'm happy to propose that we note the report. Somebody happy to second? Councillor Morehouse, we vote on the report. And we've got 1 abstention. Thank you. Recommendation 2. The trustee is invited to agree and commit to the roadmap in principle. Is anybody happy to propose that we do that? Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Gray has seconded. We vote on the roadmap in principle. Abstention and 1 against.
Okay.
Thank you. Third recommendation, the trustee is invited to agree that a feasibility review is needed to assess A, if the existing operational practices comply with current regulations, B, to understand what the implications of option 2 and 3 are. Is somebody happy to propose that? Councillor Morehouse, Councillor Anderson, the seconded. We vote on that. And we've got 1 abstention and 2 against.
On the basis of the money, to point out on that comment.
We haven't come to that, that's the final one. So, recommendation 4, the trustee is invited to resolve that £10,000 should be included in the STBF budget for 26-27 for costs incurred in undertaking a compliance review.
I will not vote on the grounds that I would be potentially prejudicial. It is a conflict of interest, so I will not vote on this particular item.
Why would that be a conflict?
Well, I've said very clearly, if you go one way, I'm not doing something, go another way, I'm doing something different. So I don't think I should vote on that.
I'll propose.
Proposed from Councillor Pennington. Somebody happy to second it? Councillor Wiles, happy to vote on that? That's 2 abstentions, 2 against, and sorry, 2 abstentions, 2 against, and 1 declined to vote.
There's 3 abstentions, I think.
Where's the third one?
No.
Oh, you might
I'm colourblind, I can only see 2 from
no, it's confusing.
Nine
We need to hold these up separately, don't we?
Okay.
You sometimes can't
Thank
tell
you
what-
very much, members. I know it's difficult, but hopefully, as we move, it'll be less painful. Yes,
So, just in terms of timetables, we need to agree the STBF budget in March. Okay. So at the moment, the budget, perhaps I should have said this before we voted, the budget is a balanced budget, if we put £10,000, we can't take it from STC because that budget has been agreed and signed off. So if we agree this £10,000, it will go into the budget in March, and we need to agree that budget in the March meeting, which will have to be drawn down from the STBF reserves. So just to make that clear.
Yes.
I think that was the assumption.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to
Yes.
do that because didn't want to then have
It
an
doesn't,
argument in
doesn't
March.
carry reserves as such.
Yeah.
So,
Are you talking about 10,000 out of £2 million?
yes.
That's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous.
Anyway.
Set amount, I think it is. But we've got 12 weeks to go.
Yeah, it's the budget.
It should be flexible.
Yeah, well, the budget needs to reflect an amount to enable the work to happen, but also to make sure that the budget is balanced. That's why that amount is in there. It's a capped amount.
You're capping it. I think it should be a flexible. I think it's ridiculous, £10,000 or $2 million.
Up to £10,000.
Up to well, it's worse. Look at the state of this building, look at the state
Oh, no,
of
no,
It's for legal.
It's for legal advice. It's for the actual
It's for the legal
feasibility.
Oh, it's a well, I'm saying against it anyway.
Yeah, I know that.
I thought about the total budget.
No. Okay, can I say thank you very much for working through this and finishing it earlier than I expected, but date of next full STBF meeting is on the 16th of March 2026. Yes, do you want to make another comment?
Yes, sorry, I will be on holiday. The RFO has volunteered to take minutes.
He isn't very Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.